Now let me actually read you something from a guy by the name of Wilt Chamberlain. Who here has heard of Wilt Chamberlain? Anybody? Wilt is still Chamberlain. He's known for being perhaps the greatest basketball player of all time. Before Michael Jordan, he was considered the greatest basketball player of all time. Now, a few things to know about Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain died when he was 63 years old of a heart attack. Okay? Now, Wilt Chamberlain was known to be perhaps the greatest basketball player of all time, but even more so, he was considered the greatest athlete of all time. Okay? Wilt Chamberlain, when he was a pro basketball player, in high school, though, before that, he also ran track and field, and he set a national U.S. record for a time of, the quarter mile in less than 48 seconds, I believe it is. It says here, he ran a quarter mile in less than 48 seconds to set the U.S. high school record. Okay? Very fast. But, he also was the state Pennsylvania shot put champion. These two things don't go hand in hand. When you do the shot put, you usually have to have a lot of strength on you. So he was basically extremely fast, and he was extremely strong. He was a top-notch athlete. He also came close to setting records on the high jump. Okay? So he went to college. He was the Big 8 high jump champion his junior year. And he also competed in the hop, step, jump competition. I don't know. That's not a sport that's common today. I'm not sure what that is. Now, in the NBA, he was famous because he was the only person to ever score 100 points in a single game.
Nice.
He actually averaged more than 50 points per game in 1 year. 50.4 points per game in 1 year. Okay, they actually changed the rules of the NBA because nobody could stop him. He was too fast. He was too strong. You could go on YouTube and see he literally jumps over players and dunks the ball. I mean, it was crazy. He was the best athlete that existed during that time period. So he plays in the NBA for a while, and he ends up retiring, and he becomes the greatest volleyball player of all time. He's considered by many people to be the greatest volleyball player of all time, and it's something he picked up on the side when he retired from basketball. He also challenged Muhammad Ali to a boxing match. Okay? And Muhammad Ali, from what I understand, basically turned it down because he was afraid, didn't really want to box him. Because, Wilt Chamberlain was basically the best athlete at everything. But when he retired, he didn't become one of those athletes that just let his body get destroyed. He actually stayed in great shape. When he was at the age of 60, he ran the Honolulu Marathon, and he also competed in the 50-mile race in Canada, and this is a guy who benched 500 pounds. This was a guy who was in incredible shape. So how does a guy in this good of shape die at the age of 63 from a heart attack? Okay? It doesn't really line up, but let me read you a few things here. His first issue with his heart was in the 1964 season. Before the season, in his late 20s, his coach said he had a heart attack. In his late 20s. That's a pretty young age for anybody to have a heart attack, much less the greatest athlete in the world. That's pretty rare, isn't it? Well, let's read a few more things. In 1992, they were having the 20th anniversary celebration of the NBA championship for his team, and he had to leave early because he was having trouble breathing. Remember, this is a guy who several years later was running marathons and a 50-mile race. He was still in incredible shape, okay? Why is this guy, how did he have a heart attack in his 20s? Why is he having trouble breathing? The greatest athlete in the world. Well, it says here that how he died was from cardiomyopathy, okay? Now, let me just go through a list of things of what can cause cardiomyopathy, which led to his heart attack. One thing is if you have high cholesterol. He did not have high cholesterol. In fact, he actually had a very good diet as well as eating very healthy, because his whole thing was basically being the greatest athlete in the world. Okay? He did not have high cholesterol. Another thing is damaged heart valves. He did not have damaged heart valves. Another thing is genetic conditions. Nobody in his family had this heart condition. Okay? It didn't come from his parents, as far as we know. Another thing is long-term high blood pressure. He didn't have high blood pressure. Another thing is obesity. He wasn't obese. Another thing is thyroid disease. Didn't have thyroid disease. Another thing is diabetes. Nope on all those. Another thing is nutritional deficiencies of vitamins or minerals. Once again, he had an incredible diet. Okay, so he got vitamins, he got minerals, he was eating very healthy. I mean, he basically did everything perfectly that we're going to talk about in the next several weeks in terms of having a diet and exercise. He did all of that stuff. Okay? Another thing is drinking too much alcohol. He was not known to be someone who drank alcohol because he took care of his body. Recreational drugs such as cocaine, amphetamines, or anabolic steroids. No evidence that he ever took any drugs like that. Chemotherapy or radiation to treat cancer. That doesn't apply to him. He never had cancer. Iron buildup called hemochromatosis. That was not diagnosed with him. He did not have that. Another thing called sarcoidosis and amyloidosis. Maybe someone else can pronounce it better, I don't know. But he did not have those things. Autoimmune disease such as lupus. He did not have that either. It leaves one thing that could have caused it. Infections. He died because of infections, and he got cardiomyopathy. Well, what could have caused these infections? See, there's one thing I didn't mention to you about the life of Wilt Chamberlain. Not only was he the greatest athlete and famous for scoring 100 points, he was also famous for bragging that he slept with 20,000 women in his lifetime.
Right.
He's famous for being the greatest athlete in the world and being the biggest whoremonger on the planet. You say, I don't like that word. That's a Bible word.
Right.
Isn't that what we quote in Revelation 21:8?
Yep.
A whoremonger is a guy, basically a guy that's a whore.
Right.
Those are Bible words. He was a whoremonger. 20,000 women. Think about that number for a second. 500 women a year for 40 years. That's the famous athlete that everybody loves. Actually, that's a lot of athletes are like that. They live that sort of life. They're a bunch of whoremongers.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing about this. This article is from a doctor. This article is a guy by the name, or someone named Dr. Merkin, Gabe Merkin. And so these are not my words, but he says that he died from an infection. And what he said is, he could have easily have acquired these infections from making love even at considerably less than the 20,000 women he claimed. And what does it say at the back? The moral of Wilt Chamberlain's story, promiscuous sex has its price. The only thing I don't like about this article is it should say being a whoremonger has its price, because that's a Bible word. You say, why do you use that word? Because the Bible says you make sin exceedingly sinful.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the Bible says. This guy was the greatest athlete in the world. Man, he looked like he was in great shape. Didn't I say earlier about how if I worked out all the time, I would look like I was in incredible shape, compared to what I am now? But there's an associated blessing from living from God, and there is unhealthiness attached to living a sinful life.
Right,
and if
right.
you sleep with 20,000 women, you know what? I mean, when he was in his 20s, he almost died of a heart attack. I mean, this is a guy who was, at the time, the best athlete in the world. But you know what? Sin has its price. Those weren't even my words. That was the words of a doctor who we assume probably isn't a Bible-believing Christian. But according to them, he died by being a whoremonger. That's what he said. Look, sin is unhealthy.